And I think that's true with any industry. And getting like I want to go back to your comment about being uncomfortable.
Okay, Pat.
There's levels of discomfort. And for me, like when I was working shift work, it was very uncomfortable, but more than the uncomfort of having to work night shift and carry a lot of gear on the job was the discomfort of not getting ahead in life. And that's the discomfort that drove me to a place now where I'm 10 times more uncomfortable, where my net worth has, I don't even know, 1,000x in under a year. We went from $65,000 in debt to our net worth is in the millions, and we have no money. And,
right.
and to think
you're
like
doing it
we're
right.
living, like if I thought back a year ago and said like you're going to be a multimillionaire, but you're not going to have any money, but living with that discomfort and knowing and having the belief and that self-image that I'm going to keep building and keep solving those problems day after day after day, and that consistency and that drive and that belief is what builds it.
Yeah.
Right, and that's key. So, I mean, you said it perfectly, because being an entrepreneur, you need to be able to be uncomfortable, but you definitely, like you said, also need to have that emotional intelligence, because solving problems takes a level of creativity, and you need to be able to handle those as they come at you. And sometimes they come at you multiple times per day. The punches just keep coming.
Right. And I have this sort of visual image, and I have said this multiple times, sometimes on my social channels, like I can get kicked in the teeth a lot. I've learned how to get kicked in the teeth over and over and over and over again, and how to get back up. I've learned how to take those kicks and get back up, right? And not be crushed by what's actually happening. And I really do believe that's like a muscle. Like you can strengthen that. Like, oh, okay. Like, oh, look, there's another thing that's gone sideways. All right. Now we're just going to have to navigate through that. And if you have a bunch of them in succession, right? Gosh, that's uncomfortable. But you're like, oh yeah, look, oh, they're coming in waves now. Okay. So I'm just going to buckle up and solve. I want to talk about one thing that you talked about. So, right, you increase your net worth and right, but like you have no liquidity. Well, you're doing it right. So I used to think that my liquidity was making me comfortable. I was so comfortable because I had lots of money sloshing around. And like, if anything happened, right, people talk about, well, you need to have 6 months worth of reserves. I mean, like I had like a year or more of reserves, right? And we have a fairly large lifestyle just in case. I don't have any liquidity. In fact, when we sold our company and the funds transferred, I had a plan right away. I got to deploy, because that money needs to be working. Instead of saving it, it needs to be out making money. So the velocity of money now is absolutely key. So I don't even really look at, I mean, the net worth piece. Yeah, that's great, but I can't eat on my net worth, right? So I have only a certain amount, right, that I know comes in and goes out, and that takes care of my daily life expenses. And the rest of it is deployed 100%. And I say to Mohammed, who's my director of finance, you are responsible to make sure that money is working. Because if I have a couple 100,000 coming back and it's sitting there and it's not working, then I'm looking at the aggregate average, like if they're lending deals, what is our average lending rate right now? And if it starts to slip a couple of points, it's because the money's not working. Right? So I want it all out at all times, always. And when there's excess coming in, now I got to find more places to put it, because I learned by being around people like you and others who were doing that. That's not how I operated. It's completely changed. And I'm comfortable. I'm super comfortable, right? Because by the way, I've never been hungry. I've never been homeless. Like those are things that are not going to happen to me. Maybe I can't go out and buy the Tesla next week because I'm not liquid.
Yeah.
But do I need it?
Right. Exactly.
And it's a reverse in our logic to actually think that it's a good thing to not be liquid, right? Because it's so much more comfortable to have that money sitting in the bank. And I have a similar money story to you, where my parents always taught me that you have to save for the rainy day and your money has to be put away until you retire, and then you live modestly, and that's how life goes, right? And so to get results that are not logical, to get the generational wealth and to get your money working for you, you actually have to do something that's not logical to most people.
I'll tell you guys a story. So when our transaction closed, we opened up 3 infinite banking policies. We had them all lined up when the sale of the transaction, the funds flow. And we contributed huge amounts, like large amounts. And essentially, so our death benefit is like $15 million. My son, right, who's 16, so it just basically ensured that he is a multimillionaire because we're going to die. We shut off all of our term life policies. We don't need term life now. And then we pulled and borrowed all of the money out from those policies, right, to deploy those out. That is like that whole strategy, though. I lined it all up ahead of time. And I was like, okay, I talked to lots of different people. And I talked to a couple of other like high net worth individuals. They knew nothing about it. So I was like, oh, wow. Okay. So a little bit like I was a little fearful, like, ooh, am I doing this right? Because most people who've sold their businesses, we have some friends who sold their businesses for huge amounts of money. And they said, well, you need a wealth manager. Oh, you need this, you need that. And I was like, well, I better go and get one of those. And then I thought, no, I don't. At some point, maybe I will have something like that to do the work. But right now, I want to map out how I'm going to do. And nobody was talking about, like, in the wealth management space, these infinite banking. I was like, well, then I can't use them. So we went ahead and we did it, and we plowed that money into it. And then we borrowed that money out, and we started deploying it. And effectively, like, I look at now, like, my son will never, for generations to come, because my son also has an infinite banking policy.
Nice.
Right? He's 16. So, again, like, that's a crazy mindset shift. I know no one in my circle that does anything like that.
Yeah.
Well, that, like you said, go ahead.
No, I was just out of curiosity, I'm dying to know, is your son interested in following in your footsteps? Is he involved in the business?
He did his first loan, which was he borrowed from his infinite banking policy, $45,000. He did it at, I think it was either 15 or 17% in 2 points, to somebody in our mentorship in second position.
Nice.
And he actually worked in my land business this summer with our customer service team, calling sellers and sending offers.
Wow.
So he's not interested. So my husband's an intellectual, and my son is an intellectual. He wants to be an engineer, but he also is very comfortable in his skin. So I could see him doing something in the engineering world, but for himself, because he's got the entrepreneurial spirit as well as the raw intelligence to do something really big, like change the world with a biofuel, right?
Amazing. That's amazing. I wanted to touch on something because, Rhea, like, you're talking very high level. So you're talking about infinite banking, you're talking about private equity, exiting companies. These are very high level things for most people. Like, the majority of the population will never experience private equity or infinite banking. But there's a reason why, and it's not because they can't. And I love that you said that earlier on, that you were raised never to know that you can't do anything. So it's like that word was taken out of your vocabulary. It's, Rhea, you can do anything that you want. Anything that you believe you can do, you can do.
Yeah.
And so what I take from those stories and from your life and your journeys is a very clear message, is that everything is built on how you see it and the way that you think about it. And that is your mindset. Because had you not had the correct mindset, you may not have ever sold your company. You may not have ever invested in real estate. You may not have ever explored infinite banking.